All right, so I was just explaining before, but I'll say it again. Like, one of the reasons that I feel like I want to do this is because, like, it can be really difficult being a creative and finding inspiration, and there's so much like practical stuff and difficult stuff that we have to contend with, challenging stuff, that I wanted to just like do some talks that are like that help us to find our inspiration in all of that, because there's a lot of mundane, challenging stuff that we have to deal with. So I wanted to put something out there that that helps us find our inspiration. The other thing as well is I've realised, because I've been thinking about why I'm even doing this week, is that I noticed that I've spent a lot of time like online looking for inspiring videos about creativity, because you can find a lot of videos, but they're usually about sort of general spirituality or life in general, but they're not about creativity, our game. And so I thought, let me see if I can put out what I've been looking for. And also the videos that I find are always really short as well. They're like 2 or 3 minute, like, you know, little nuggets, and I wanted something that was a little bit longer, something I can really get my teeth into. So that's sort of part of the thinking here. And so every week I've been doing a different topic. First week I did rejection. Yeah. Next week, the week after that, I did work ethic and the hustle. This week I'm talking about criticism, and next week I'm going to talk about the magic of like what it means to be a creative. So I'm going to start. So with criticism, I feel like when you're a creative, it feels like it's coming from like all different directions, and it can feel like that is a big part of like what we have to sort of contend with. The main part, well, not the main part, but one of the biggest places that it comes from is our inner critic, like our own noise that's coming from inside, telling us, I can't do that, I'm not good enough, I don't know how, I haven't got the resources, it won't work out, yeah, I haven't got the talent, people don't like what I'm, you know, making, what I'm doing. And it can be debilitating. It can be enough to not even allow you to get started if you sort of listen to that noise. But one of the most important things I think we have to do for ourselves, because everyone has that noise, not even just creatives, everyone lives with that noise that goes on in our heads. And I think we have to think about, what is it? What is it and where is it coming from? And it's basically the mind. But we are, the mind isn't all we are. It's, let's say ego, right? It's like this survival mechanism that we've all got inside us, and all its job is survival. It wants us to survive, it wants us to be safe, and one of the ways that it can help us be safe is to keep everything the same. Don't let anything change. So the moment you have this inspired idea to put yourself out there and have a creative idea, the sort of survival mind goes, no, it's not going to work out, just stay home. Stay home. If it had its own way, it would literally keep you indoors watching Netflix and eating pizza and never going anywhere. Don't try that thing new, because it won't work out. You're not good enough. You don't know how. No one will like it. You know, blah, blah, blah. It just keeps... Something was to be in my live video. Not right now. But yeah, it just keeps this sort of noise going. And our job as creatives is to not override it, not even quash it, but just to give it its space. Just go, thanks very much for the information, but I've got other things that I need to do. Because the thing is, if you believe what your monkey mind is saying, that mind that never stops, it never stops. You notice that you can't control it. Like, it's not that old thing of like, don't think about pink elephants. You can't control this mind, this mental chatter, and it's always going to be unhelpful in that sense of like, it's never going to give you that particular part of the mind. It's never going to give you like inspiration. It's always going to be, you can't do it. It's not going to work out. Blah, blah, blah. So what you've got to do is just give it its space. Just go, cheers, and get on with what you've got to do. Because the thing is, if you buy into what it's saying, look, whatever you decide to buy into, you get to be right. If you decide to buy into that mental chatter that's telling you it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out, because you're going to orientate yourself towards things not working out. And then when it doesn't work out, you go, I was right. If you orientate yourself, hey Ian, hey, how you doing? If you orientate yourself towards things working out, I have opportunities, I have the resources that I need to make this work, whatever it is. If you orientate yourself towards a positive outlook, then things are going to go your way. So whatever you choose to believe, whatever part you listen to, you get to be right. So why not like just recontextualize that sort of mental chatter and allow more empowering thoughts to come through. I'll give you an example. I was on this kind of like personal development course one time, and they said that one of the they had us do this little exercise where we had to put on an event for some friends or something like that. And it had to be something creative and, something sort of inspiring or whatever. Anyways, so I decided that I was going to have a salon. So you remember, like, I don't know if you're aware, but like in sort of, I don't know, I can't remember what period it was, but like the French used to have these salons where they'd invite, thinkers and philosophers and artists, and you'd all come and exchange ideas and learn and grow and, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, I'm going to have one of these. It would be amazing. And I planned the whole thing out, and I made sure that when I invited people, nobody knew each other, so that they wouldn't sort of huddle in like little cliques and corners. They'd all make sure they got to know each other and go open-heartedly and all this sort of stuff. Anyways, so I cut my list of people I was going to invite, and I remember so clearly, I decided I was going to send everyone letters in the post rather than, emails or texts or whatever, because I thought, how often these days do we get letters that aren't bills? So I thought, I'm going to send everyone a nice letter. So I got my special paper, printed them out, did the design, all the rest of it. And I remember so clearly walking to the post office with all these letters in the beautiful envelopes, stamped, ready to go. And I just could feel myself bottling it, because I was like, no one's going to want to come. They're going to just think it's stupid. You're going to look stupid. Yeah, all these thoughts started flooding my mind. And I just had to really push through that. And I remember it felt like I was climbing over, those sort of red and white things they put in the road to stop, to stop traffic when they're doing roadworks and stuff like that. It felt like I literally had to like climb over one of them and keep going. But the moment that I posted those letters, I could feel that something had shifted, because I had overridden that chatter that a lot of times I would have listened to and just gone, yeah, you're right, it's stupid. No one's going to want to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So we have to put that sort of mental chatter into context. It's always going to be there. Hello, Simon Briggs and Hendrik Sanders. Simon, I'm doing a chat about being a creative, so I don't know what you're doing here. I'm joking. So if we put that in a context and don't buy into it, hello. If we put it in a context and don't buy into it, then we can just go off and do whatever we want to do. I think one of the mistakes that sometimes people make is feeling like, when you hear like, I don't know, personal development or self-help sort of books or whatever talking about all that, and they feel like they've got to suppress it. That's not going to help you, because then you're just using a load of mental energy to suppress something that's just got this natural impulse to happen anyways. So just give it a context. Just go, thanks, I got it. You don't think I'm going to make it? Well, watch me. Do you know what I mean? And also we can never let those things, because none of the things that the mind is saying are real. Yes, you have the skills. Yes, you have the resources. Yes, it can work out. Yes, people will like it. Some might not, but you know what I mean? You can't allow these things to be real. And you've got no excuses. You've got Stevie Wonder, blind guy playing the piano. Hey, Martin. You got, guys painting with just their left foot. You've got, what was my other example that I thought? Oh, people making films on iPhones. Because a lot of times filmmakers will go, well, I can't get hold of a camera and I can't do this, I haven't got the resources, blah, blah, blah. If a guy's making a film on an iPhone, that's it. It's over. Nobody can complain anymore about not having the resources to make a film. So we can't let that sort of mental chatter get in the way. I think that's really important. And good evening, Wax Pusher. And I think that's one of the things that I think is really important. Why I want to do these conversations is because I want us to get the sort of strength, the sort of fortitude to be able to push through all that bullshit. Be creative warriors, because that's what it takes. Everyone thinks that because when they see a creative, maybe they've got more access to their gentler side. People get confused and think that creatives are soft. To go through what you have to go through to make it as an artist, it takes a lot. I'm not saying it's the hardest job in the world. Obviously, we're not miners, we're not doctors, we're not nurses. I know that. We're not teachers. I get all that. But what I'm saying is that to be told, no, not good enough, keep trying, keep going, all this sort of stuff constantly, and not knowing ever that you're ever going to get there, you have to have a sort of mental strength to make it. That's why a lot of people don't. So that's why I'm here doing this, is because I want people to get that mental strength. I want us to become creative warriors that can just push through the bullshit. All right. So that's what can get in the way of you actually starting. So say you start. Gemma Pello, that's a very difficult tag name to pronounce. I'm not going to, but hello, Gem. So you've made your thing. You've started the process. The next wave of criticism that might hit you is feedback from your peers. Kevin Smith is a big inspiration for me. Makes clerks in his... Right, exactly. In his spare time, maxing out his credit cards to do it. Exactly. Robert Rodriguez made a film that cost $6,000. He must have just taken a loan to make it or something. I mean, there's no excuses. And so once you started to work on your project, the next phase is going to be putting it out there and sharing it with your peers and getting a bit of feedback. Now, some people don't like doing this. I think that is a big mistake. There's some people that aren't right to show your work to, and it's not necessarily people who don't work in the industry, but I think you've got to know what you want and why you're showing it to that person. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes with a script, for example, I want to show it to someone who works in the industry as a professional storyteller, not necessarily a screenwriter, but tells stories for a living, because I want their expert opinion. But then sometimes it's handy to show it to someone who doesn't work in the industry and just get a gut reaction from them. I think the mistake that a lot of people make is like not wanting to show it to people at all, because it means they're precious about that particular thing, and it means that because look, at the end of the day, if you're not willing to show it to one person, why do you want it to be out in the world as a piece of art for other people? It's hard to share your work, especially when you're not sure about it, but the more you're able to put it out there and share it with people to get honest feedback, then the more you're able to develop it. Because if you're not willing to share it, maybe that means that deep down you know that something's not quite right about it. I know from my own personal experience, when I've shared stuff, or when I've been reluctant to share stuff, it's always been because deep down I know there's something not right, something needs to be addressed, and I don't want to hear that person tell me it because I don't want to do any more work on it. I've already worked hard enough, I don't want to do any more. You know what I mean? So like, we have to get over ourselves basically and share it, share what we've created, because you don't have to do what the person says or suggests. They're just going to give you their opinion. After that, it's up to you. But to get someone's gut reaction to something is really helpful. Now, the thing is, one of the challenges is to learn how to interpret those notes, because not everyone knows how to give notes. Especially if you're asking somebody who's not in the industry. If you show them a painting or photograph, like I showed my mum a picture. I mean, I'm not a professional photographer, but I got a bit of kit and so I took a picture of at the dinner table, and my brother was in the foreground, in focus, and my cousin was in the background. No, my brother was in the background, out of focus, and my cousin was in the foreground, in focus. And I thought it was quite a nice, soft focus in the background. But my mum just looked at it and she went, "Oh, you didn't get Phil." She saw that there was something wrong with this picture. Now, she might not be familiar with, that technique of having someone blurred in the back, blah, blah, blah. But actually her gut reaction was something's not right with this picture. Maybe I hadn't composed it quite right, so that it did look a bit odd. Maybe my brother was a bit too prominent in his out of focusness in the background. Do you know what I mean? So like, you can interpret what people are saying. You don't have to take it like, if they go, it was a bit long, I'm not even describing what I'm talking about, but say they're talking about a film or something that you've made, and they go, it was a bit long. That note might be saying, the story isn't progressing enough, so it started to give the viewer the experience that it was too long. So maybe there's a bit in the story where the momentum of the story sags and the audience are losing interest. They don't have the language necessarily to be able to say that, because they're not film critics or whatever, or they're not, not there to analyse a film. They just go on their gut reaction. It was a bit long. So interpret the note. Learn to take a note from somebody and try and understand what it is they might have experienced, and see where you can make that difference, make a change to the work you've done. When I was working on Amber, as a short film I made, we showed it to our editor's partner, and he watched it, and he said, I wasn't there for this, but our editor fed back to me, and he goes, he said he felt like he didn't feel sorry for our lead character. He felt like she was a bit brattish, and we were like, no, this is like really important for the whole thing. It's like this is her story. But it was such useful feedback. Luckily, we were able to add a little bit of dialogue, and through that dialogue, we were able to add a little story beat for that character that added a bit of sympathy. And now when people watch it, they have a bit of sympathy. They empathise with both her and her antagonist, I suppose, if you want. Hey, Mandy, how's it going? But if we hadn't had that feedback, we would have been going into film festivals and not knowing why we kept getting rejected. Again, with the same film, I showed the film with our first music score to our first AD, who is also a director, and he was just like, that music doesn't work, it just there's too much of it and it doesn't sound good, and that made me go back to the drawing board, and we actually got someone to compose a completely original score. We had someone very kindly composed and recorded an original song. We got another artist who gave us the rights to use one of her songs as well, and it totally changed the film. We wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't got that feedback, because the thing is, when you do get that feedback, when you share it with other people, they're able to see things that you can't. It's just the way it goes, because their life has been different, their experiences have been different, so where they're looking from is different. If you just reference of only your own experience, you're going to miss stuff. So actually, as an artist, you're doing yourself a favour by encouraging this criticism, encouraging these notes, encouraging this feedback that you would never otherwise have been able to get. And look, the thing is, when people give this information, they only want it to be better. They're only saying where they think it could be better. Who doesn't want that? So you've got your inner critic, then you've got feedback from peers, then you've got professional notes. Now, I don't know how it works in all industries, so I'm going to speak about writing, screenwriting, and depending on what industry you're in, it might be applicable to you, I don't know. But with screenwriting, most of the time, especially with TV, you're sending your script into a production company, and you will have a producer or a development person there who will give you notes. And this, being able to take notes is a skill in its own right. In fact, if you're making anything for screen, you will probably be getting notes from somebody. For example, an editor, when they finish a first pass, they'll get notes from their director. Then once the director's finished their pass of the show, then a exec producer might then be giving them notes. So there's notes, there's a lot. In TV and film, there's always notes floating about. Would you say it's important to receive criticism in the proper way? Sorry, I'm a slow typer. Lol. I don't know what you mean by in the proper way, because sometimes people are not considerate in the way that they give notes. I think I was going to come to this later, but I'll tell it to you now anyways. I showed a script of mine to somebody, and they I demolished it. And when I got their notes back, I was just like, I was so devastated because I just lost complete faith in this script. I knew there was a problem with it. I knew that it needed work, but I was just devastated by these notes, and I just abandoned it because I felt like the amount of work that would be needed to be done anyways, regardless of how this person expressed themselves, the amount of work that needed to be done, I just didn't have the inspiration to do it. I just sort of abandoned the idea. But what I did notice is that this person who'd given me the notes just didn't seem to have any consideration for the thought and effort and time that I'd put into this script. He was just a little bit inconsiderate in the way that he expressed himself. His notes were good. I didn't necessarily agree with all of them, but a lot of them were good and correct. But it was just a little bit careless, the way that he expressed himself. Hang on, Waxbush, I'll come to your question in a second. But then it made me think about a time a friend had asked me to give notes on their screenplay. And I realised that I had done exactly the same thing. I'd been really harsh. I didn't think the screenplay was good, so I told them everything I thought that was wrong with it. And I ended up writing a really long email of saying, this story doesn't make any sense, this story beat doesn't make any sense, that doesn't seem plausible, this character's not very good, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he was kind of, I could tell that he was a little bit I could tell he was a little bit upset, but the next time I sort of was in communication with him, I think it was over email. And I was just like, it's not a good script, so... But now being on the receiving end of it, I've realised that you've got to be... If you're a professional giving notes to another professional, you've got to be considerate of like the time, effort, whatever that's gone into it, what you think they're capable of, where they're at, all that sort of stuff. You can't just like blurt out everything you think. Because sometimes your mates do show you stuff and it is shit. But who are you to just go, it's shit? When they put all that time in, and at least they've done it. At least they've got past that monkey mind chatter and got something out. So I don't know that you can expect people to give notes in the correct way or the proper way, CDE lifestyle, but I think that as creators we should be mindful of how we give notes and who we are when we're giving notes. Do you think that we're too precious about our creations? Look, the thing is it's good to be... It's good to be in love with what you've made because you're going to love it. You're going to love it more than anybody else. No one's going to love what you've made more than you do. Unless it's Star Wars and George Lucas. Probably he's sick of it now. But there's a difference between being precious, like holding on to it. This is the best thing ever. And being loving it and wanting to share it with the world. Because sometimes... You can tell, with a sort of amateur, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, I just mean amateur screenwriters as in they're not doing it professionally, is that they've usually got one script. This is it, this is the script, this is the one I'm going to sell, and this is going to make me, and they don't write anything else. That is not going to get you anywhere, because that is being precious. If you want to develop your talent, set that one aside, let your agent, or however you're getting it out into the world, let that sort of do its thing and start on the next one. Because as soon as you start to hold on to that one thing, it's like you're never going to develop and grow as an artist anyway. So it's not healthy to be precious, but it is good to be in love with what you've made. I remember when I first started doing stand-up, and the goal as a stand-up is to get to like a 20-minute routine. That is like the big holy grail. And I got to that 20-minute routine, and then I used bits of it on TV, particularly on Michael McIntyre's Roadshow, and then so that gets broadcast and quite a lot of people see it. And I remember seeing Michael about sort of maybe a month later or something like that. I think it was at the Comedy Store, and he was talking about, I've got this new material and I don't know whether it's going to work. And I was like, I'm still doing that same 20 I did on your show. And he gave me this look as if to say, what? Do you know what I mean? Because as far as he was concerned, and I think he said as much, if you're not, you got to let that go. You got to start writing the next routine. But I was like, oh my God, no, I don't know if the next routine is going to work. I've got this 20 works. You had it on your show. I'm going to use it on this. I'm going to, And he was just like, no, let it go, move on, write the next routine. Otherwise, how are you going to get better? You can't be, there are some comics that just like have this 20-minute routine that they do, but they can't do it on TV because they can't, well, if they do, they can only do it the once or twice before everyone's like, oh, that's that routine. So you have to keep changing it up. Some comics do just have that one routine they do, and they do it all around the clubs. But if you want to be successful and be on TV, and you have to keep churning out new material. So we can't be precious. And I think that applies to all art forms. It's like, don't hold on to this one thing that you created that you're like, this is my life. Let it go. Let it belong to your audience, and then you create something else. You're the source of it. That's what I realised after that McIntyre interaction, is that I'm the source of the material. I am not the material. The material isn't me. So I'm where it all comes from. And that's what I have to protect and keep and be precious about, not the material itself. It's almost like the material is a byproduct of the process of keeping this stuff going. If that makes sense. So the pro notes, that's what I was about to talk about. This is this is a challenging thing, and I think there's an art and a skill to being able to navigate notes from whoever has commissioned you to do what you're doing. Or even if you're trying to get an opportunity from somebody, like a production company or something like that. Don't ever disagree with them. This is, I think, one of the mistakes that a lot of people get. And Wax Pusher, what you were saying about being precious, this is where that can really bite you in the arse. Is if you are going into a meeting with somebody and you want an opportunity from them and they give you a note and you're like, no, you're wrong. How well do you think that's going to go down? And how likely do you think it is that they're going to give you this said opportunity? If I don't agree with somebody on a note and I feel it really strongly, my advice is keep asking questions until you do agree. So instead of saying, no, you're wrong, just go, so just explain that a little bit to me, because what I was thinking was this, and then they'll explain it a little more. But don't you think that da-da-da-da? And then they'll explain a little bit more until you find a place that you can, and come at it genuinely like you want to find a solution, not being a dick about it and asking questions to catch them out. Like genuinely want to understand why they see this differently from you. I had I'm writing a book at the moment, and I had a meeting with the publisher, and she really wants me to, with my editor, and she really wants me to write character descriptions, as in what the characters look like. And I started reading this Nick Hornby book, and I'm like, he doesn't do it. Why do I have to do it? And so I brought that up in a meeting, a creative meeting that we had, and she explained to me why, and I kept asking questions about it, and she's like, basically, the demographic that you're writing for, the types of books that you're writing, the reader likes to have a picture painted of the character. And as soon as she said that, I was like, got it. So instead of being a dick about it and going, I'm not writing the sort of book that needs physical descriptions for my characters, la la la, I kept asking until I understood, and I really understood it. And by doing that, the information got into my body, as it were. Like, it made sense to me. It wasn't just a piece of knowledge that I had or a piece of information. It genuinely made sense. Of course. So ask until you understand. Also, remember that notes are an audition. If you've not worked with these people before, they're going to be looking at how you deal with notes to see if you can handle it. Can you handle it? And if notes freak you out and spin you out and piss you off and all the rest of it, they're going to be like, oh, this person is going to be difficult to work with. And that becomes apparent immediately. So just be chill. Never show that you're upset by notes. Unless, obviously there's circumstances where that can happen. And I've expressed frustration with notes, but I've been in tune with the person that's talking to me, and they know that my frustrations are sort of valid. So it's not like I've been given a note and I'm going, oh, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean? It's been a conversation where something difficult I've been attempting to deal with something, a note that's been given to me, and I'm not getting great clear information. So I was getting frustrated, but I could tell that the person I was talking to understood that I was getting frustrated and was appreciating me trying to deal with these difficult notes. But most of the time I would say never show you're upset. It doesn't matter to them, and it shouldn't, and it shows that it's too much emotion if you start to get upset, especially when you're actually in communication with them. By all means, let rip. after your phone call or your meeting or whatever, or as you're writing your email or whatever, but not in the room, not with them, not on the phone with them. And always say thank you for the notes. Thank you because remember, they've given their time, especially if it's an unsolicited thing or a speculative script, say, for example, a speculative thing that you've created that you want somebody to have a look at. Especially with screenplays, I don't think people realise how much time it takes for somebody to take out of their working day. And they're getting scripts from everywhere. How long it takes them to actually look at a script and give you thoughtful, considerate feedback. So thank them for their notes. And they're only, same as with the friends' feedback, they're only saying it to make you better or make what you've made better. So cheers. You know what I mean? I think one of the other things with notes is like to be mindful that what is being given to you isn't pulling your work out of shape. As in, it's not turning into something that you don't want it to be. Because that can happen. I was watching something yesterday. I was reading something yesterday, and it was talking about how Pretty Woman originally started out as this really gritty drama about this prostitute that gets involved with an old man, and it was going to be quite a dark story. But then Touchstone took it on as the distributors, and they turned it into what we now know to be, this sort of almost fairy tale. I'm not saying that the writer didn't want that to happen, but you see how things can completely transform once somebody else's notes come into the picture. And if it takes your work in a direction you don't want to go in, that's different from being precious. You have to weigh up, do I want this opportunity with them, or do I want to keep the integrity of what I originally planned? And that's a decision only you can make. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what the right answer to that is? A friend of mine said that he had a similar situation to that, where he'd written this script and he had a really clear idea about what he wanted it to be, and he took it to a production company and he just felt, I just don't get it. They just don't get it. And so he walked away, and that's really brave, like to just be able to walk away from that. Hey Carly, hey Clive, how's it going? I'll just do a quick summary for you guys just to catch up. I was saying that criticism feels like it comes from everywhere, and the place that I was saying, one of the biggest places it comes from is like the inner critic, and just saying to contextualize that noise and don't let it dictate whether you even start, because it can be debilitating. And then I was talking about sharing your work with your peers to get feedback, to make your work better and not to be precious about it. And then I'm just getting on to getting professional notes I was talking about screenplays, but I'm sure it applies across the board to all different art forms. And yeah, I was just saying how a friend of mine, don't let notes, be gracious in receiving notes, but don't let them pull your work out of shape if you've got an idea of how you want it to be. So that's kind of where I got to. My next point was don't be a diva. Everyone gets notes. I mean, I think that's the overarching thing is everybody gets notes. Then one person who isn't going to at some point be receiving notes from somebody who in authority, who you've allowed to be in authority over you because you're looking for an opportunity or you're looking to work with them, who's not going to give you notes. Everyone gets notes. So don't be a diva about it. It's just part of the journey. When I wrote this Sky short that I just recently made, I just checked yesterday. I did 16 drafts of this script. And that was for what turned out to be a 7-minute film. 16 drafts. When Michaela Cole pitched the pilot for Chewing Gum, she did 55 drafts. Not 10, not 20, not 40, 55 drafts. Everybody gets notes. If you're a professional writer and sell your work for a living, then do you think that allows for more objectivity over your work? I think that professional writers are more likely to be able to be objective about their work because they know, they understand the process more. I think when you're an amateur or a hobbyist, you are more doing it out of passion. And so you're probably more likely to be more attached to the work that you're creating. Whereas as a professional writer, sometimes you're writing to a brief or you're writing to a deadline. So there's not the time to sort of get precious about it. What can happen is that when you have got criteria like a deadline or a brief or something like that, it can be really inspiring when you suddenly find this inspiration to write something that's really great. And you're like, bloody hell, I did that. And under all these constraints, and that can be really exciting. But I don't think that sort of compromises your subjectivity, or your objectivity, should I say? But yeah, I think professionals probably are a little bit more objective. I think that's across the board as well. Is that like I'm sure all of you guys are all in different fields. I'm sure that if you do what you do professionally, there's an element of you that is able to be a bit more sort of like have a little bit more distance from what you create. So just two more areas to talk about. One is critics. So you've gotten over yourself to get the thing started. You've gotten peer feedback. You've gotten notes from your producers. Now the thing is out there. Whatever it is that you've created is out there. Next thing, what happens? Critics. Critics look at it. This is a really interesting thing with dynamic with artists and critics, because if they say something nice about our work, we effing love them, don't we? We're just like, the critics said this, 4-star reviews, we'll put it all over our Instagram or whatever, 5-star reviews. If they don't like what we made, they're like idiots. What do they know? When I first took my work to my publisher, Washington Green, they tore my art to shreds. Wow, it was really freeing as a self-taught artist. Open my eyes to my blind spots and push my work forward fast. Exactly, and that's the point: is embrace the criticism. It hurts at first, but you ultimately will grow from it if you choose to. I was watching a TED Talk yesterday, and it was this coach, I think he's a football coach, talking about how the kids with more self-confidence are the ones who choose to interpret their notes and criticism in their own way. Because he said his son, who's not only good at football, I'm just trying to remember the story, he says his son, who's not very good at football, he came back and he's like, Dad, did you see me? I did 2 assists and I did this and I headed the ball and blah, blah, blah. And the coach was just like, I don't remember any of that. But his son had just found a way of interpreting the game in his own way, and he was just having a great time. And I think that's important. You don't want to be delusional, but you can take what you want from what's said, and you can take, you don't have to take it all either. Some of it can be, well, I think that's wrong. So there you go. I remember getting notes back from an audition that I read for a role like 3 times. And the last time I got some notes back from the casting director about my performance, saying I did a good job, learned the lines, blah, blah, but there was something, something missing, and that's why I hadn't got the role. And at first I was really upset. I was like, fuck, shit. Maybe I'm not a good actor, blah, blah, blah. And then I realised, I wasn't right for the role. That's all it was. It wasn't about, if you read for a role that you're not right for, it doesn't matter how great an actor you are, you're not going to get the job. Now, that could be me putting my own Pollyanna spin on it, but that was the take that I took from it that was really empowering. The moment I just went, that was all it was. It wasn't about the quality of my work. It was about, I wasn't right for it. It made the notes not be this burden and hurt. It just made it like, okay, got it. You can't be right for everything. Makes me think of that line from Fight Club, Kylie, losing all hope was freedom. There you go. Oh, you guys bantering amongst yourselves. All right, so critics. Here's the thing about critics. Their job is to deconstruct, not to construct. So this whole thing where people go, like with Simon Cowell, people always lose their shit over Simon Cowell because it's like, he's never sung a note in his life, blah, blah, blah. That's not his job. His job is to critique, find stars, or, I don't know how to describe what they do on X Factor, but his job is not to be a performer, not to create. And not to create in the way that an artist does anyways. His creation, his creative skills are different. Critics' jobs are to deconstruct. They're to look at the work and deconstruct what is there. Their job is not construction. Their job is not to produce anything. So they're doing a totally different thing. They're coming at art from a completely different perspective. critics don't owe us anything. They don't owe us loving our work. That's something we've got to wrap our heads around. They don't owe us shit. They're also, critics aren't just trying to write an objective appraisal of what you've done. They're not your teacher. You know, they're trying to write something that's entertaining to the reader. Because I don't know if you've ever, I remember, I think it was Charlie Brooker used to write, he used to do a sort of a roundup of the soaps in the Guardian Guide every Saturday. And I remember that was really all, I bought the whole, that big plastic bag full of Guardian newspaper. I used to buy the whole thing, and that was my favourite thing in the whole thing, because I used to watch the soaps, and I would literally be crying as he sort of did this breakdown of what had happened on EastEnders and Corrie that week, because I was watching it, so I knew exactly what he was talking about. And but so he was writing a piece of entertainment in its own right, but it was at the at the mercy, or it was, you know, the soaps were the target sort of thing. So yeah, they're trying to write something that's entertaining. And the thing is, the fact is with critics, the more work we do, the more likely we're going to get criticised. The more, not criticised as in, I don't mean like necessarily negative, but our work is going to be assessed, appraised, you know, reviewed and stuff. And we just have to get used to that. Otherwise, don't stick your head above the parapet. Don't make anything. Don't do anything. Because with the praise comes the criticism. Just, they go hand in hand. You look at how much love people in great shows get, or, you know, really popular TV shows, or, you know, how much love J.K. Rowling gets. But you look at her acts on Twitter, and you see how much hate she gets as well. So once you stick your head above the thing, then that is what you're going to have to contend with. And it means you're doing well. You're doing something right. If you're agitating people and making people think about your work, you're out there. So just take what you need to take from the criticism. Dismiss the stuff that's irrelevant to you. Not right for the part, or whatever it was. Dismiss it. It's not yours. And I think when it comes to reviews, if you are producing a sort of work that is going to get reviewed, I think you might need to decide on a policy of how you're going to deal with it. Are you going to read reviews, or are you not? Are you going to get somebody else to read reviews for you and filter them and just give you the good ones? Or are you going to leave it 6 months before you... There's all kinds of ways of dealing with it that make it a bit easier on yourself. I struggled with reviews at the beginning with stand-up, especially like... doing my stand-up shows in Edinburgh, and you know, you'd get the I don't know, the Guardian or whatever, or the Observer, or I don't know, like the List, and you're like, oh, 2 stars, thank you, Julian. What's his name? I can't remember his name, but I remember I had it in for this guy for years. I remember years after he gave me a 2-star review. He approached me at a party, and I could see that he didn't really know anybody there. He was kind of on his own. And I just went, all right, just walked away and left him. So decide on a policy. You know, you don't have to stick to it or anything, but decide on a policy of how you're going to deal with reviews, just to make life easier for yourself. Personally, I think it's quite good to leave it a minute, like when they first come out, and just because otherwise you don't want it affecting necessarily what you're doing, especially if you're in a show that's ongoing or something like that. When we did The Miser, I did a play called The Miser earlier in the year, and we were all terribly excited about this play. We thought we might get a Broadway transfer, all these kind of highfalutin ideas we had about this play, and then press night came. And we're like, ooh, it went really well, show went really well on press night, blah, blah, blah. And the reviews came out, and they were so mediocre. They weren't even bad. They were worse than bad. They were mediocre. And the energy in the company just got really deflated. Not for long, we sort of bounced back, but it just became more of a perfunctory thing to do the show than the joy and the aliveness that was in the show before we did this. We got these reviews. It was really, really interesting. Anyways, so yeah, have a policy and know that because what I do sometimes as well is I prepare myself. I think, what will I feel like if I see a bad review? If I read a bad review, I'm not feeling particularly robust today. I won't read. I won't read one. And if I am feeling robust, then I can take it. I mean, I've seen some like things written about me online. I saw something the other day. Someone had made a picture of me, and like, I don't know, I can't remember what they did. They'd done like half a man and half me, and I just burst out laughing. And I was surprised at myself because I think I'm quite a sensitive person, and I thought that something like that would really hurt my feelings. And I just laughed because it's just such a funny image. But there would be days for sure that I would not be able to handle that. So I think, decide beforehand, can I handle this? If I see if I see the worst thing ever written about me or my work, can I handle it? If you can, have at it. But if not, just give yourself a break. You don't need to watch all this stuff. Brene Brown says, or read all this stuff, I mean. Brene Brown says, not all critics are worth listening to. She says, if you are brave enough to enter the arena, then ask yourself, is that critic in the arena risking themselves too? Yeah, I think that's even given them even more importance than they require. I mean, I think we can put whatever importance on their critique that we want to. I mean, to be fair, say you're making films. If Mark Kermode gives you a great review as opposed to, I don't know, some blogger or whatever, I think, I would definitely hold Mark Kermode's like opinion in higher regard. But if Mark Kermode doesn't like my work, but my film is a box office smash or something, then I'd be like, who cares what he thinks? So I don't know that even I would worry, because critics aren't risking themselves. They're just. It's a pretty low risk art form. I don't know. It's arguably an art form, but anyway. So none of them are really risking themselves, really, are they? None of them are really putting themselves out there. Not in the way that we are. We're putting our hearts out there. Do you think it's artistic insecurity that makes us focus on and remember the negative more than the positive, or maybe it's just part of the learning process? I think that's human nature to focus on negative rather than positive. So I've noticed that, say I've done like Mock the Week or something like that, I've noticed that I'll be very grateful for all the lovely comments that come in, but that one person that just goes, all she ever talks about is being Nigerian, I'll be like, right, and I'll make a big deal about writing back to them, ignoring all the other people that have just said lovely thoughts about, that they thought I was funny or they enjoyed what I did. So yeah, it is a bit of a trap, but I think it might be human psyche rather than being an artist that creates that, because I bet everybody does that. I remember Jason Manford talking about how when he does stand up, like, you're looking out and you can see a sea of people just loving what you're doing, people laughing, bent double, having so much fun. But then you see that one person who's just there like that. And they might actually be having a good time. You just don't know, but you just get obsessed with this one person. Like, what is wrong with you? It's human nature. All right, so last couple of things. Peers and punters. Now, on this front, I think it's a very choppy landscape. And what you're just saying about focusing on the negative comments as opposed to the positive, it's a minefield as soon as peers and punters get involved. Hey, Chase, what up? So, I don't even know where to start, basically. I don't know where to start. I think one of the things I noticed yesterday was that we, as artists, I think we should be mindful of how we criticise, especially publicly, how we criticise other people's work. So Anthony Bourdain just got shut down, like, quite sort of categorically by Ava DuVernay for criticising a film. I can't remember what one it was. And I was kind of like, I get that, because we, as artists, know how much work it takes, how much work goes into producing something. So we know better than anyone that to just dismiss something with a tweet or a Facebook post or just a random thoughtless comment, it's just like, it's harsh. So I think we have to, as creatives, need to just be mindful. I'm not saying never criticise anything. I mean, we're human, and there's many times where it's almost like I save that for private conversations with other people. It's like, oh my God, did you see that film? Like, it was terrible. The acting, I don't get it. Do you know what I mean? You have that conversation, but I think publicly, we are able to be supportive. In my acting class, the coach says every time, at the beginning of the class, he says, you know, try to watch your colleagues, try to watch as colleagues rather than critics. And I think that's a lesson for life from an artist's point of view, is try and watch everything as a colleague or a critic. He says, try to see where you would make the same mistake rather than criticising them for the mistakes that they're making. And so often, when I'm watching acting particularly, and someone makes an acting sort of mistake or whatever, if you want to call it that, I think, my first impulse is still criticism, but then after that I think, oh, wait, I've definitely done that. I know for a fact I've done that. So watching as colleagues instead of peers, no matter what it is you're experiencing, because the hours, the effort, the self-doubt, all the soul-searching or whatever that's had to go into creating something, and then we're just going to dismiss it with a, oh, it wasn't very good, was it? Oh. You know what I mean? Like, we can do better than that. We can do better than that. Then the other thing is jealous peers. Sometimes they can, like... I think more what I want to say is more about how we are with other people, with other peers. That sometimes to just be aware of our own jealousy, sort of thing. Because sometimes I find myself criticising things that are actually pretty good, but because I want to make myself feel better, bring them down a peg or two in my own mind, I criticise them. I find ways that wasn't very good. Didn't really like that. Yeah, well, I mean, it's all right. It's been done before, though, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with what I'm watching, what I'm experiencing, or whatever the art that I'm experiencing. It's just that I feel insecure about myself, and so I'm trying to project it outwards rather than just look at myself and just go, oh, I'm just jealous. And I think at the moment that as an artist, you can own your jealousy, you've got so much power, because then you can just go, oh, I'm jealous, that's all it is, I'm jealous. And then you can just get to enjoy what that person's done and start rooting for your peers. You know what I mean? Like, I've really found it like really inspiring to just go, that is brilliant that happened for that person. And instead of like indulging my jealousy, you can still be jealous and root for somebody, but instead of like that being the predominant thing of me going, yeah, they're not very good, yeah, being all snide, instead I'm just going, amazing, they have won, they're winning, good for them. Because what someone said to me once, that if people around you are starting to win, that means you're in the presence of winning. So that means it could be coming to you soon too. So even just if you want to be strategic about it, if you root for other people will start rooting for you, and you might start winning too. So the jealousy is not even needed, I say. With punters, it's very difficult to deal with them sometimes, because they say lovely things a lot, but my God, the hate. And I'm not talking stuff that needs to be reported. Let's like set that aside, stuff that needs to be reported to the police. I'm talking about just like the sort of common or garden sort of hateful tweets and comments. Do you know what I mean? You have to find a way to deal with them. And one of the things that I think about we're really talking about social media, is don't engage with them too much. Don't get angry. Don't. So the moment you reply, they've already won, because their comment was a thoughtless moment in their life. They didn't think about what it took for you to create what you've created that they're criticising. They just had an impulse, and because we've got social media now, they lived it out. So be mindful of how you respond to them, because you're giving them so much power, even just by acknowledging what they've posted or written to you or about you. And remember that you are experiencing it as though they're a normal person. They might not be. And I'm not saying that, oh gosh, this is going to sound like so un-PC, but they might not be, oh, I'm only allowed to do 2 more minutes. I think you're only allowed to do an hour. Okay, all right, nearly finished. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to finish by quickly reading you a bit of If, because I think this is really good for creatives. So if you can dream and not make dreams your master, because art is what we're doing, we're dreaming. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, so criticism and praise, and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth You've spoken, as in your art, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up again with worn out tools. I just took a little excerpt from it because I think that that is so applicable for what we are trying to do and how criticism, how we have to sort of deal with criticism. It was just a little excerpt from If that I picked out the other day. So sorry I've had to sort of rush the end of it. I didn't realise that there was a time limit on live chats. But I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I mean, the other thing about social media is don't feel like you're entitled to an easy ride. If it doesn't work for you, if you can't deal with the way people are treating you, then just get off it. Do you know what I mean? Get somebody else to deal with it for you and just set it aside. You don't need it. Everyone gets this idea, I have to be on social media. You don't. Anyways, all right then. So that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Sorry about the time thing. I just completely just had a mind melt and said the wrong time. But I'm glad that the people, that you guys were here to be here for this. And next week I'll be talking about magic. This will be on my Insta story for 24 hours and then on YouTube afterwards. I've literally got 3 seconds. It's counting me down.